Okay. Hello and welcome to our holiday dialysis webinar brought to you by Kidney Wales in collaboration with Kidney Care UK and Freedom Dialysis. I'm Georgia, and with my colleague Karine, we'll be your hosts today. So if you could just please mute your microphones as this session is going to be recorded, and feel free to use the chat box for questions and comments. And thank you for joining us. And let's dive into our discussion on holiday dialysis. So to provide you with a glimpse of today's agenda, we're going to explore 3 topics. So that's going to be UK holiday dialysis, abroad holiday dialysis, and cruise holiday dialysis. So we'll dive into the procedures, what to expect, and essential factors to consider when making bookings. And following that, then we'll hand over to our guests from Kidney Care UK, Lindsay, and Freedom Dialysis, Laura. And then next, you'll be hearing from one of our volunteer ambassadors, Helen, where she'll be sharing her first-hand experience with holiday dialysis. And then after, we'll have a look at our Q&As and some information from our Jamboard. So I put a link in the chat box function. So if you don't mind, if you could all just have a click on there. And if you can just write any questions you may have about holiday dialysis, and we'll review them towards the end, make sure we've answered any questions throughout, and any that remained unanswered, that will be our opportunity then to sort of help you a bit further, okay? So I'll give you all 5 minutes just to answer some questions while we admit some more people into the webinar. Okay, so whilst you guys are just writing some information in the Jamboard, feel free to continue. I'm just going to talk a little bit about UK holiday dialysis. So we're going to have a little look at the process and expectations. So from our research, what we have noticed is that not every unit operates in the same way. So what we've done is we've compiled a list of information that we think would be the best step forward. So step 1 is informing your dialysis centre of your intentions, because they'll be able to help you and support you through your entire planning journey. So when you think, okay, I'm looking to have holiday dialysis, one of your first point of calls should just be having that initial chat with your renal team. Step 2, then, we say start by researching dialysis centres in the areas you're planning to spend your holiday. So you can use online resources such as the NHS website or dialysis centre directories to find dialysis centres in the areas you're looking to have your holiday. Step 3 is once you've identified potential dialysis centres, reach out to them either through your centre or directly to inquire about availability and booking procedures. And step 4 is looking at booking accommodation. So look at locations and accessibility, especially for PD. Don't forget to call your accommodation beforehand and explain any requirements that you may have. Step 5 is then looking at arranging transport. So making sure that there's arrangements for transports to and from the dialysis centre before you leave. And this may involve using public transport, and depending on location and your preference, you may be able to walk to your dialysis centre. Step 6 then is looking at travel insurance, which we will talk about a little further on. And step 7 is packing essentials. So anything you may need to make yourself more comfortable during your sessions. We'll dive into this in further detail a bit later. But for example, just assume that all dialysis centres are completely different. So if you know that when you go for your dialysis session, you typically stop off and get a snack from a vending machine, just assume for the safety of it that they don't have one of those in this dialysis centre, and just make sure you bring something with you if that's what you'd like to do. So step 8 is keep in touch with your dialysis centre and don't leave without a contact before. And step 9 is just to enjoy your holiday. Once everything is arranged, relax and enjoy your holiday, knowing that your dialysis needs are taken care of, and take advantage of the opportunity to explore and make memories with your loved ones while maintaining your health and well-being. So we've compiled some things to consider. So limitations. Know and feel comfortable with your own limitations and don't push yourself too hard. If you are using buttonholing, be aware that not all units will be trained to use buttonhole, and be confident to do it yourself as you would at home. And on that note, just be mindful to take your own equipment and medication. Research, we mentioned this previously, but looking at locations, hotels and transport, and really look at the information of where you want to go and have some confidence that you're prepared in that. When we talk about locations, look at cities as well as coastal areas, as coastal areas tend to be quite popular, and have a few places in mind that you would like to visit just to avoid any disappointment. Hotels, make sure to check accessibility and distance from the unit, and don't be afraid to call your hotel and talk about any requirements you may have. Be prepared. And what I mean by that is consider that not all units are like yours. So bring your usual comforts, but also consider things you may rely on at home, for example, pillows and food. I will now pass on to Corrine, and she's going to go through abroad dialysis with you.
Hello, everybody. Georgia, do you want to do the slides? I can't click across for me. Cheers. So just a few things to consider then, similar to sort of dialysis in the UK. So make sure you're researching your destinations, look at where you want to go and the type of holiday that you want to go on, and just take a look at where those dialysis units are located in those areas as well. How close are they to accommodation, to activities or places that you want to visit? There are websites like nephrocare.com that we'll put a link at the end and pop in the information pack we send out. And basically, there's a website that you can search where the units are located around Europe just to help with your research of where they are. Once you've had a little think about where you'd like to go, the next sort of first step would be to inform your dialysis unit that you currently dialyse at. Now, as we've already mentioned, each unit does work in slightly different ways in who you need to speak to there. But so long as somebody is aware there, some may have a holiday coordinator that you can chat to, some it may be through the nursing staff or renal social worker. And certainly there are members of staff there that if they're not sure, they'll refer you on to somebody that is. But always inform them about the fact that you want to go on holiday and where. Some units obviously have to be booked well in advance, more so than others in sort of popular destinations. Your unit may very well have a holiday brochure to look through, so just make sure that you let them know as early as possible, really. When you're looking at accommodation, possibly close to the unit, so there's less travel time for you. But take into consideration that transport to and from your resort or the hotel to the unit, and just factor this into your holiday costs. Vaccinations, again, standard for anybody going away to abroad anyway. But for this, I would definitely check with your renal team again and what vaccinations you might need and what's safe for you. And additionally, think about getting advice from a dietitian, perhaps to chat about what foods to maybe avoid or just things to be mindful of when you're abroad in certain countries. As well as if you're booking any activities that you don't normally do, it might be good to just ask some advice from your doctor or your physio if you feel that you need to. Medications, think about obviously your medications. There are lots of travel pots that you can buy to keep your tablets organised when you're out and about. But when you're actually travelling, keep a repeat prescription with you. And all the labels, make sure all the labels that remain on the boxes. So should this be questioned at all, it can be easily identifiable as an essential medication that you need. Also, it might be a good idea to split your medication between your case and your hand luggage. For a worst case scenario, obviously, if your case goes missing, then you'll still have some medication to take when you arrive or if you need to. And before leaving, just make sure you have a contact number for the unit that you'll be attending for dialysis, should you need to confirm any details or contact someone in the event that you might be unwell or need advice, as well as a number for the unit back home, should you need advice from them as well. Be aware that there may be obviously a language barrier at the unit that you're attending. However, obviously don't let that put you off, as most will speak English and be able to translate for you. For self-care patients, as we've sort of mentioned as well, I'd be prepared that your unit might not be familiar with buttonholes if you're dialyzing at home. So just don't be afraid to take control of your own treatment and basically do as you would at home in when you're needling yourselves. And lastly, obviously, all this information can seem a bit daunting when you just want to go on holiday and relax. And if you're feeling a little overwhelmed, maybe just start off small, go as far as you feel comfortable, and just talk to other patients that maybe have been before and their experiences. And obviously, again, just don't forget to enjoy. Georgia, if you want to the next one. So cruise dialysis, there are lots of different companies that can offer cruise dialysis. We've just sort of picked out one that we have that there's a brochures readily available for. So some of the questions then from cruise dialysis, so where your dialysis will take place on the cruise. So the dialysis will take place on board the ship in a dedicated dialysis suite. They'll have a medical facility set up there on board with your staff, and usually a nephrologist will be there as well. So as a case of when your dialysis will take place, in most cases, the dialysis teams try to arrange your dialysis when the ship is sailing. So to best allow you to make the most of your time when you're ashore and exploring. When will you have your first and last dialysis session on board? So typically your first dialysis session will take place on the day after you embark. So for example, if you leave on a Saturday, your first session tends to be on the Sunday, and your last dialysis session then similarly will take place the day before you disembark. So if you come back on the Monday, then your session usually is the day before. And typically the sessions in between for however long you're on board for will be similar to your current schedule and every sort of second day on board. They do tend send the dialysis schedule to you before the cruise, so you'll have a chance to chat to your dialysis unit and work out any issues should there may be. Can the dialysis team be contacted 24 hours a day? Is a yes. At the beginning of your cruise, you'll be introduced to the dialysis team on board at a meeting, which is where you'll be given sort of contact details for the dialysis team if it hasn't already been shared with you beforehand. Obviously, different cruise dialysis companies do work in slightly different ways. This has just been picked out from cruise dialysis there. And can you get a grant towards the cost of your cruise? Is yes. Obviously, we'll pass on to Kiddie KUK a bit later on, and they'll tell you all about that. Want to click off to the next slide, Georgia, for me? And just things to consider when for cruise dialysis then. As you can see, obviously on the slide before, there was a website that with more questions and answers regarding the cruise dialysis as to where you can request a brochure and send to you as well. And we'll pop that in at the end. So some of the things to consider are the same as what you'd consider when traveling abroad, really. So I won't go through another huge list for you, but just things to be mindful of is don't forget to communicate with your renal social worker or dialysis centre when considering cruise dialysis. That's one, obviously, the first steps that we've talked about when considering dialysis. So just keep that communication open. And a bit of pre-cruise prep. So before you depart, just familiarize yourself with the cruise ship's layout. You've often got this sent to you, or it tends to be in the brochures of what cruise you're going to be on, and the layout there, including the location of the medical facilities, the dining venues, any accessible areas, just to help navigate the ship really and try and get the most out of your trip. Plan out what you want to do and book your dialysis early just to make sure you get the slot that you wanted. The sessions will obviously be booked before you leave, and generally they do try to accommodate as best they can to what's closest to your current schedule. And sun protection. So make sure that you protect your skin from any prolonged sun exposure, especially if you're receiving dialysis. Obviously, certain medications or conditions can make your skin a little more sensitive to sunlight. Use as high a sunscreen SPF as you can, and make sure your fistula is protected in particular as well. You can buy covers, but I'd be wary about wearing anything too tight or constricting around the fistula. If you're applying sunscreen at regular intervals, then you should be fine and not need any sort of special cover for it. And just seek shade whenever possible. And obviously, lastly, just enjoy again, just have fun and enjoy. Obviously, it's a lot of prep and research, but once that's all done and it's all booked, it's plain sailing, to excuse the pun. That's it. I'll hand back to Georgia for, I think it's is it a 10-minute break?
Yeah, we were going to take a
It's a
10-minute
bit of
break.
whiz through
However,
that.
we've managed to go
Yeah.
through that quite quickly. So, is everybody happy to continue for a little bit longer and we can take a break shortly? You can use the reactions if you'd like and just do a thumbs up or okay, in which case I will pass over to Lindsay from Kidney Care UK.
Thanks, Georgia. So, hi everyone, I'm Lindsay. I work for Kidney Care UK. I'm one of the patient support and advocacy officers in Wales. And one of, especially around this time of year, one of the biggest queries I tend to get is about holidays and can I go on holiday? What help can I get? So this is a very timely webinar. So as mentioned, yes, we do give grants towards holiday and respite breaks because everybody deserves a holiday. We don't think holidays are a luxury. We think holidays are something that everyone should be entitled to have, whether you have a long-term health condition that affects your ability to travel, or maybe if you have some financial difficulties because holidays are expensive. We think everybody should have the chance. So that's why we give grants. So we can give grants to either individuals on their own or as families towards the cost of a basic holiday, either at home in the UK or overseas. We don't prioritize one over the other. We think all are worthwhile. So could I have the next slide, please? Oh, one back. Thank you. So our holiday grants, unfortunately, they don't cover all aspects of your holiday. Because of the high demand that we have, we are limited in what we can and can't pay for. So at the moment, the way in which we cover holiday dialysis grants is that, I will get to that shortly. Thanks, Jackie. Thank you for the prompt, though. We cover holidays in the way that we pay the holiday, I've forgotten the word already, the travel agent. We pay the travel agent directly. So in order to do that, we would like it to be a reputable travel agent, somebody that's like ABTA at all protected, just that we know that your holiday is safe should anything happen. And they are means tested in the way that we will ask some details about your income and outgoings, just to make sure that if we do have to choose between whether we can give a grant to one person or another, if we have too many requests in, we try to prioritize the person that is less likely to be able to afford that holiday without our support, but we do try to support as many people as apply. So unfortunately, we cannot reimburse any holidays that have already been booked or paid for. That includes deposits. So that means that it does take a little bit of planning to get a grant application in with us. So we ask for a minimum of 8 weeks before you plan on going on holiday to apply for our grants. That allows a little bit of time to go through the processing of the application. If there is any information missing, it gives us some more time then to get in touch and just fill in some blanks, maybe check if the unit are happy to support your application. And then once it's approved, we can then pay the money that we have granted you towards the travel agent. And so the grant can cover travel to or from your destination. So if you're traveling within the UK, it could be a train, it could be a flight, say, to the Scottish Isles. We also cover accommodation. So in terms of a cruise, that is technically your travel and your accommodation, so we could pay for that. We cannot pay for the cost of dialysis treatment itself, and that's something that I'm sure Laura may touch on a little bit later, but it's because we have an agreement within the NHS and many European countries and countries outside of Europe, we tend to not cover the cost of dialysis at all. We also can't cover travel insurance, but we can take the bulk of the holiday costs with the accommodation and travel. So could I have the next slide, please?
Sorry, it's just been a little bit slow.
No problem. I thought it was having a break, didn't it? So, and my final slide on this is about the insurance and planning. So you'll already get plenty of information on how to plan the best holiday you can throughout this webinar. But I just wanted to say a little bit about insurance, because we can't technically suggest or recommend one particular insurance company for you, because we don't have the financial qualifications to be able to give you those kind of recommendations. But on our website, we do have a list of insurers that we know in the past have covered people with chronic kidney disease going on holiday or any other pre-existing medical conditions. So it's important. It's always important to take travel insurance out anyway, but it's more important to take full insurance out when you have any kind of health condition, because nobody ever wants to fall ill on holiday. But if you don't take out proper cover, stating all of your medical conditions, and something happens, so for example, if you have a bleed on your fistula, but you didn't tell your insurance company that you have chronic kidney disease, if you have to stay out there a little bit longer, that might be completely at your cost because you didn't inform them. So it's so important to take out insurance. And alongside all of the information on insurance we have on our website, we also have a CKD travel guide that will be linked in with information you receive after this webinar as well. But there is plenty of information there that you can take in your own time, at your own leisure. And of course, you know, happy to answer any questions you may have. And thanks, I'll hand back over to Georgia.
Lovely. So what we'll do is we did promise a break, so we'll take a quick 10-minute break for anybody who wants to just grab a drink or anything, and then when we come back we'll be joined by Laura from Freedom Dialysis, and we'll go into a bit more detail then about how the grants and travel work. Okay, Laura, if you're ready, I'll hand over to you.
I am, thank you. Hello everybody. My name is Laura and I am the director here at Freedom, the Dialysis Holiday Specialists, and also Dialysis Freedom CIC. So I'm here to talk to you today a little bit about what we do and the services and support that we offer around holiday dialysis. So I'll start with Freedom, the Dialysis Holiday Specialists, and we are the UK's only holiday dialysis specialist with over 30 years experience in organising dialysis holidays abroad. We have a partnership with Millington Travel, who are an ABTA and ATOL bonded travel agency. So they have a large access to the travel market, and obviously you're safe, financially protected under their ABTA and ATOL licenses. They are able to book kind of your traditional package holidays that you might see with tour operators like Thompson's, Jet2. So your package holidays when you get flights, accommodation and airport transfer all together under one package. But also with them having an ATOL license, it means that they can access flight only and accommodation and put those together and package it under their ATOL license. So it gives them a big range of market options for you. You don't have to book a package holiday. Some people might only want to book a flight only if they're traveling with or staying with family and friends, or have somebody where they've got accommodation that they can use, then you know, that's fine as well. And they also can do UK holidays, but we'll move on to UK holidays after this slide. So the areas that we offer, we've got over 400 units in over 60 countries worldwide, our largest being within European destinations, but we do also do further afield from Europe, obviously outside of Europe, USA, America, the Caribbean islands, Asia, lots of destinations worldwide. Our biggest destination within Europe, we have the most units and areas available there because the demand for us is usually under the EHIC GHIC card. So I'll talk a little bit about what the EHIC and GHIC is and what that does for you as a dialysis patient. So the European Health Insurance Card was what was used post or before Brexit, sorry, the GHIC replaces that. So before Brexit, it was called the EHIC card. Still is valid as an EHIC card, European Health Insurance Card, if you still have one of those. They were valid for 5 years at a time, but the GHIC, the Global Health Insurance Card, is what is replacing the EHIC card. So if you applied for a new one now, you would get what is called the Global Health Insurance Card. And they're free to have. You apply on the NHS website. They're valid for 5 years at a time. And what that does is it entitles you to reciprocal treatment within those EU countries, some outside of EU as well, Australia and New Zealand, and a few other areas outside of the European Union. It covers the cost of the dialysis treatment as you are being treated like a local resident. So there are a few exceptions with that where you may find you might have to pay a small supplement towards medication. the main area where that happens is in Switzerland. It's minimal. It might be something like 10 Swiss francs for the medication on top of the cost of the dialysis treatment, but the dialysis treatment's covered under the reciprocal agreement. So you don't pay anything for the dialysis treatment, but you may pay a small supplement for medication. But that's something that we as a company would advise you at the time of request. So if you came to us and asked for certain destinations, we'll always give you the information on what's covered, what's not covered. The same with transport to and from the dialysis facilities. There are a few that will provide transport to and from dialysis, so we'll always advise you of that as well. We charge an administration fee for our services abroad, but for all Welsh patients, that is covered by the Welsh Trust. So you don't actually pay anything for using our services if you're a Welsh patient within Wales. So that's a bit of information on what we do. We have a website. We have staff available to speak to on the phone Monday to Friday. So you will always come through to a person that you can talk to if you want to discuss anything further, and we'll advise you of the process, advise you of what we need to do to make and request dialysis, all the way through from the request process to before travel. And obviously when you're there as well, we always give out emergency numbers or the information that you need on where you're traveling to, the unit, and emergency contacts while you're there as well. So that's a bit of information on what we do. Individual travel, you can travel anytime you want to, but we also offer group trips. So usually we offer 3 groups a year to different destinations. That's where a few of the pictures on the slide are from. So we travel to the same hotel. You can fly from the local airport that's closest to you. We all stay in the same hotel, dialyse at the same unit, normally do an excursion as a group as well. And we find that it's a popular way to travel for people. Often if it's their first time, if they want a bit of reassurance, somebody travels with the group as well and accompanies them. So that's a little bit about what we do on our abroad side. And then next, I'm going to talk about what we do within the UK for dialysis away from base in the UK. So, Dialysis Freedom CIC, we are a non-profit organisation and we work in partnership with Kidney Care UK, and we offer a free holiday support service for dialysis away from base within the UK to all UK patients. So the service that we offer is to help with finding the arrangements and booking of dialysis away from base in the UK, which you may have experience of. You may have found difficulties within that. In the UK, there are limitations with the amount of sessions and capacity within units within the UK. Not all units offer holiday dialysis or dialysis away from base. So sometimes it is a case of finding the next closest maybe to the area that you're looking at, if the area that you're looking to travel to, the units locally don't have any space for dialysis. There are set sort of units and areas that have availability for holiday dialysis that run those slots, every year, which we have access and the availabilities of. So we can always guide you to the areas that are better to look for holiday dialysis if it's that you're looking for a holiday destination. If it's that you're looking to travel to visit family and friends or work or a wedding or an event, we will always try and find a space for you in the closest area that we can. We do sometimes facilitate what we call swap spaces as well. So some units offer set holiday dialysis slots, which is what we would call holiday dialysis slots. And then some units will offer swap spaces. So that's where they are facilitating a swap, maybe if the unit is at capacity with their own local patients. And the only way they can offer a slot is when one of their own patients is traveling away from the unit. So there is that option as well for some areas where maybe space is more difficult to get, that we might be able to facilitate something when another patient is travelling abroad. As I said, this service is completely free to use if you're a UK patient living within the UK. We have a website again, phone number and staff available every day to talk on the phone, so we can offer you again the advice and guidance. We liaise between your home unit and a holiday unit to make sure that everything is completed before you travel. The same, I think, as abroad and UK, the process and what you need to do before you go away, and also at the request stage. It's not always just about what space is available, but also that unit can medically accept you and be able to provide you with the same dialysis treatment that you have at your home unit. So there is always a process for every unit, and I would say it's a similar process in terms of you usually have to go through the same steps to arrange holiday dialysis, but it can look a little bit different per unit, because each unit usually does have their own requirements. So that's a bit of information on both sides on what we do, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have, and hopefully it will give you a bit more insight into what we do and what options are available for dialysis away from base.
Thank you very much, Laura. So as we've said, all this information that we've included today in the presentation will be sent out in a PDF document, including links to the website, if anyone did have any further questions. But we will have opportunity at the end of this presentation to go through any Q&As, and we'll have a look at that Jamboard and see if there's anything on there that, whilst we have Laura and Lindsay on the call today, they can answer as well. So I'm just going to introduce you to Helen, who is a Kidney Wales volunteer ambassador. So some of you may have seen Helen before, as she delivers educational talks for us on kidney health and kidney disease. So Helen's going to be talking to you today a little bit about her own personal experience with holiday dialysis, having had both PD and hemodialysis. And she's going to be talking to you a little bit of her top tips, the things that went well, the things that she would recommend to you. So without any further ado, Helen, do you want to come and say hi?
Hello, hi. Thanks for that lovely introduction, Georgia. You've actually doubled up on everything that I was going to say, so that's good. At least we're consistent. So yeah, as Georgia was saying, is that I had a kidney transplant in 1999. So fortunately, I'm not on dialysis now, but I have had. I've been a kidney patient since I was 16, so I've got over 30 years experience of being a kidney patient. Before I had my second transplant in 1999, I was on dialysis for 4 years, and that was a mix of, firstly, I was put on APD, that stopped working for me, and then I was put onto hemo. Now, I was really adamant that I would have as normal life as possible, normal in context of what is normal to me in my life. I was adamant that I would keep it as normal as possible, and part of that was working for me, but also holidays. As was previously been said, is that having a holiday is not a luxury, it's a right, and we should be able to have a change of scenery that helps with our physical health, but also our mental health as well, which is so important. They're interrelated. When I was on APD, I had experience of being on CAPD before, so I was quite familiar with it, and I was happy to do it. But I was still, like many of you probably on this call already, I was a little bit nervous about going on holiday and going to a different environment. What if it went wrong? What would happen? So my thoughts was that we would go somewhere quite local. At the time I was living in Cardiff. So we thought, well, let's go somewhere fairly local. Let's try it out. Let's see what the process is like. If it goes wrong, we can come home. That's what we thought. So we popped over the Severn Estuary. Well, went up and around. Didn't get our feet wet. And we went to Lynmouth for a weekend, where we stayed at an old inn. It was an old pub. Perfect, really lovely. And we did this myself. I didn't go through any of the systems or anything. But yeah, we did it off our own back. It meant that we had to take everything with us. So Baxter did no delivery or anything like that. We just literally loaded the car up and went, let's see what happens. As I said, it went really well. The only thing I would say is that because the accommodation was it was an older inn, it meant that access wasn't too good. Now, my partner had been there before, so he was quite confident that he'd be able to carry the bags up and down and into the room. However, when we got there, it was a bit more difficult than we thought. The corridors were quite narrow. As most of you know, those of you who are on the call and are on APD, you'll know that the machines themselves are really heavy, actually. Although they can, they're supposed to be mobile, they are mobile, but they are 20 kilograms. That's a lot. And to carry those up the stairs takes quite a bit of strength. Also, you've got the dialysis bags as well. So yeah, it's having to think about how you navigate that, making sure you have somebody with you that can carry it, or just select your accommodation appropriately. So think about having making sure the accommodation has a lift. You may want to think about going into the hotel, emptying your suitcases, and then taking a suitcase back out to the car, and then filling it with box of fluids so you can roll it in, like with a roller trolley. Save your back, save carrying those heavy boxes. It always helps. In the hotel you're staying in as well, is that the car park was on the other side of the road. It doesn't help matters, does it? Which meant that it was further to carry the things as well. So we left quite a few of the boxes in the car until it was needed. As I said, it worked really well. We had no problems. One of the things I was nervous about as well is the layout of the room. So at home, I always slept on the right-hand side of the bed. Actually, no, sorry, the left-hand side of the bed. Whereas in the hotel, for me to be closest to the bathroom, so that the drain line went into the bathroom, it meant I had to sleep on the other side of the bed. Now that was fine for me, and thankfully my partner was okay as well. But for some people, that would be a deal breaker. That would be a huge problem for them. So that's something, again, there's a theme. There are a few themes that are coming through on this in this presentation about preparation, communication with the accommodation to make sure that you get what you're expecting. So making sure, checking that the layout of the room is as you need it to be. If you need to be in a particular layout so that you can sleep on one side of the bed, ask them. So all they can say is no. Also is that the machines themselves, obviously they have to go next to the bed. Is there a bedside table big enough to be able to take the machine? Will it take 20 kilograms as well? Ask the question. It may be that you need to take a small fold-down table with you or something like that, or it may be that you need to look at alternative accommodation. One thing I found, a top tip of mine, would be take an extension cable. I don't know how many of you have gone to hotels before and you go to do your hair and the plug is just that little bit too long for your hairdryer or your straighteners or whatever. Now, when that distance is too far for your dialysis machine to come to be plugged in, that's a significant problem. So it's always handy to have an extension cable just packed in your bag just in case you might use it. Hopefully you won't, but that was my top tip of having that to hand each time. Also, tape, so that you can tape the drain line to either the floor or to the skirting board, because you're in a different environment. If you're sharing a room with somebody, they're used to a certain setup as well, and to avoid certain hazards. They're going into a different place where all the layout and the drain line is lying in a different place. So if you can try and avoid those things and tape the drain lines away, so they don't trip up in them, and you don't get harmed as well, and the dialysis machine works. Now, what I found as well, so I'm just going through making sure I've told you all my top tips. As I said, I was living in Cardiff at the time, but my family's from West Wales, and every year we go to Pembrokeshire for a week's holiday. And I usually go for the weekend to meet them. That was really important to me that I went to see them because I was dialysing in Cardiff. My normal dialysis sessions were Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday. And it meant that because I was dialysing on a Saturday, I only had a limited amount of time on the weekend to be able to come home to see them. And that was really important for me to be able to make those times, to have again, going back to having a normal life, having that time spent with people and family and friends. So I was then on hemodialysis, and PD has stopped working for me, so I was on hemo. And it meant that I was dialysing in Cardiff, but I really wanted to go on this holiday in Pembrokeshire. The clinic in Haverfordwest was chock-a-block. It was really full, and it usually is, to be honest. It's a very busy clinic. So I thought, all right, okay, plan B, I'll stay in Cardiff, I'll dialyse in Cardiff on the Saturday, and then I'll drive down after treatment. And I thought I'll probably get there about, I don't know, 4 o'clock-ish, something like that. By the time you get through traffic and everything, I thought, you know, it's fine. It's about 2.5 hours to get there. But then I thought, actually, why don't I split the journey? And there happened to be a slot available in Carmarthen, which is about halfway between Cardiff and where I was staying, near St David's. And I thought, well, if I split the journey and dialyse there, then I'm actually closer to my destination, so I get a few more hours with my family. And that's what I did. I found that really useful. I still had to go through the whole process of getting getting all the scans done, the tests done, etc., because I was still going to a different clinic. But it really helped me minimise the travel time. Now, that may not be relevant for you and for such a short journey. However, if you're thinking of going up to somewhere like Scotland, now breaking the journey is crucial really for the driver. And you may want to think about, well, actually, is this an opportunity to do a dialysis session halfway en route so that when you get to your destination, you have as much time there free of dialysis as possible. Think about using your time quite flexibly and maximising the time that you've got there as much as possible. I was working pretty much full time when I was on dialysis. I was very fortunate. I was pretty well on dialysis. And again, going back to what I said at the start, is that it was important to me to have as normal life as possible. And having a life that is where I'm not a dialysis patient is very important to me. So my work life is very important to me, where they don't necessarily know about my ill health side of it. One of the projects I was working on was up in Hull, and I could do all of it remotely, except for 3 client events that needed me to go up to Hull. It wasn't mandatory, but I should go. What I found was that, so I went. I actually spoke to Hull Hospital, and they did what's called twilight sessions. So they do sessions in the evenings, which meant that I could travel up there on the train. I could dialyse in Cardiff first, travel up to Hull on the train, and then stay overnight. The following day, go to my client session, and then the following day is that go to the next session, and then I dialyse the next night. And I did that about 3 times in various connections, different ways of going, but it worked for me. And I wouldn't say that's, I wouldn't recommend it unless it was needed, because it was hard going, but these things could be done. The benefit of being on hemo is that you don't have to take anything with you, unless, as Georgia was saying about buttonholing, unless you've got particular needles that you use yourselves, you don't need to take anything with you. So I just literally went with my medication, as I go everywhere with my medication. I went with a bag of clothes, and I went up there. Unfortunately, where I was staying and where the client meetings were was just around the corner from Hull Hospital. So I could walk there. I think I got a lift back. I got a taxi back then the night. The twilight sessions are about, they start at about 6:30, and you're on the machine until 10:30, which sounds like it is really late. But if you're a night owl, that's great. And you get to have a sleep as well when you're on the machine. And then I came back to the hotel afterwards, and that worked really well. It meant that I could have that part of my life, and that functioned really well. The next example is one of my friends. You can see her on the screen there, Danielle. She lives in Norwich. She's one of my best friends. Unfortunately, we live pretty much the other side of the country to each other. So it's really important that we get to meet up and have a good catch up every so often, and to have a normal life. She's been incredibly supportive of me and my dialysis and having a transplant. So I've been to see her quite a few times, each time dialysing over there. Once was in Wells next to the sea, and once was in Norwich Hospital. Now, 2 very different situations. It was Wales Next to the Sea was a community hospital. I dialysed there on a Saturday, and it was really, really quiet. Whereas Norwich Hospital, I did that was in the middle of as I say, Norwich Hospital, but it was it was a twilight session, and it was so much busier. What I would say is that, and again, it's a theme that goes back to the start here, is plan in advance. Trying to get into Norwich Hospital was so difficult. I had to plan so far ahead, 6 months, 9 months ahead. And yeah, you can't really do anything, no spontaneity to it. You have to plan ahead, unfortunately. Again, Wales Next to the Sea, I had to plan ahead as well, but it was slightly it's slightly easier to get in there. I don't think it actually exists, that site, anymore, but it was easier to get in there because I was flexible with my times. If I went at different times of the day or different times of the week, that was easier to get into. So I think Laura mentioned it, or somebody mentioned it earlier, about being flexible and being flexible in terms of your location as well. Now, my friend lives in Norwich. Wales Next to the Sea was a good hour drive, something like that. But she was willing to do that to make sure that I had dialysis. And she came with me. And it's similarly with Norwich Hospital, although it was just down the road, she came with me for that one as well, which was really kind of her. The thing I'll point out with this point, this point here in the presentation is it's a holiday for everybody. It's not just a holiday for you as a dialysis patient, but make sure that everyone is accommodated. So when you get to your destination, I would recommend do a recce. Just, as you arrive, when you're driving around, having a look at, getting a nice view, or, oh, where should we eat tomorrow night, etc. Just take a spin and just go to your dialysis centre, just so you know and you're happy with the route that you need to take. Because the following morning, or whenever you're going to have your session, just be prepared that you know that route. Because everything will look differently. You'll be stressed because you're going to a different location. You've never been there before. You'll be worried that you get there in time. The traffic may be different, lots of different variables. But what I'd say about your support person as well, the person who's driving you there and back, is make sure they have what they need as well for those 4 hours that you're on hemodialysis. Because some of these places don't have cafes. Sometimes they are very small units where it's just 2 beds. And so they won't have a coffee machine. It goes back to your expectations of what you're going to have. It's not going to be exactly the same as your home unit. So just be prepared. It could be that, where's the Costa on the way? So make sure that, your support person gets a coffee in the morning and a bacon sandwich, or a cup of tea and a slice of toast. Making sure that stay close to the dialysis centre so your support person can actually go back to the hotel or wherever you're staying and have some time so that they have a bit of rest and a bit of recuperation as well. It's their holiday as well, which is so important. I've got a couple of other examples. So I went to the Lake District and Cornwall as well. I've done a week in both of those locations, and they've both been amazing. Cornwall was in a hospital, but up in the Lake District, that was actually run by a couple. They were married, and that's what they've done. They were dialysis nurses, and they'd want to set up their own business, and they did holiday dialysis. And loads of people went there every year. They had exactly the same month, exactly the same week every year. And it was such a lovely, lovely setup. They even sent you Christmas cards after you've been there, just to kind of catch up and just to see how you are. So that was really lovely. They retired, but I really hope that their unit has been taken over by somebody else, because that was a really lovely setup. Again, that was a small one that it was in an industrial estate. It looked really weird to drive up and see an industrial estate going, is this the right building? Because it was in a mix of other offices as well. But when we turned up, we kind of went, oh yes, it's a dial-in. You know, they let you in via the video phone, and you went in, and it was two dialysis beds. It was completely as you'd expect a dialysis setup to be, completely legitimate, and it was really good. One of the best ones I've ever been to be honest. So, in summary, my top tips would be plan ahead. I know it sounds really boring, and it lacks the spontaneity. Keep the spontaneity for your day trips. But when it comes to your long weekends or weeks away, plan ahead. On the positive side of it, it's really good to have something to look forward to. So something to aim for, to something to kind of keep going for. It's always nice to have that light at the end of the tunnel of a holiday. Try something close to home first, like similar to what I did with Lynmouth. Just try before you buy a little bit. Yeah, think about doing something that's within like a couple of hours of a drive or something like that, just to see whether it works for you. And also, what would you do better next time? Because every situation is different. And my third point would be think about the hotel access and layout. If you're not sure about something, phone them, ask them. They're usually so accommodating and so helpful. If you're going to see family, maybe one of your family could actually go to the hotel and just do a recce for you and just take some measurements of the side table, going, yeah, no problem, the APD machine will fit. And yes, you know, there is a lift, and yes, you can park here. Those couple of things could save you so much anxiety and actually encourage you to go on holiday. Thanks, Georgia.
Thank you so much for that, Helen. And I just wanted to go back to that your friend came with you to the units. And when we spoke, you said that you called ahead and asked if visitors were able to come in with you. And how easy was that to do?
Super easy, yeah, because we'd driven an hour to go to the centre. It meant that she would have been sat in the car, and she would have been sat for another 4 hours in the car while I was on the machine, and then there was another hour back. I thought, she's not got access to a toilet. It was in the middle of nowhere. You know, she would have had to drive somewhere to get somewhere. So it was really important that she could come in with me, and she could use the facilities. She could get water. She could get a drink. And she felt part of it as well. She was incredibly kind to continue to drive me places, because it was her weekend. Do you know what I mean? She'd been busy during the week and she'd been working. So yeah, definitely phone the clinic up, ask them if they can do it. And if they can't, your driver and your support person can then make alternative plans.
Definitely. Thank you very much for that. And another thing is that we earlier spoke about how important it is to make sure you have a contact or a contact number before you go. And you gave me an example previously on our phone call of when that was really important, when you went to, was it a twilight dialysis session, and it looked like it was closed. Now that normally would panic most people. And I just want to give this as an example, as this could happen to you, and rather than have nerves surrounding it, I'd rather give it over to Helen and let her address how they went about it, what you do, and just as a reminder to remain calm, and as long as you've got everything in place, it'll be okay. So yeah, Helen, do you want to talk a little bit about what happened there?
No, so it was when I was in Hull, actually, as you say, is that so it wasn't in the middle of summer, it was sort of springtime, so it was still getting quite, you know, the nights were drawing in still quite early. And I'd walked to the hospital, and as George was saying, is that you turn up and it's a different place. It's not what you're expecting. And it just looked dark. It was just it looked like an empty building, and there was nobody turning up. And I thought, have I got the wrong place? I hadn't been able to do a recce, so I was turning this up like with quarter of an hour to go, 10 minutes to go before my session was due to start. And I thought, have I gone to the wrong place? Do I need to go somewhere else in Hull? But thankfully, I had a contact of the person in Hull, and I phoned them, and they said, yes, no problem. You are in the right place. Yes, that's fine. It's just that when it comes to twilight, we shut our doors for security purposes. So she said, yeah, phone us up, and then we'll let you in. And then we just shut it up afterwards because there's no other clinics going on at that time. It's just dialysis. So those doors from the hospital were closed at that point.
And I think that's a really good point to make, because obviously that is something that could panic someone when you've gone, maybe that might be your first away holiday dialysis session and it looks like everything's closed. So it's just a reminder really just to remain calm. If you've done all your planning and you've spoke to the dialysis centres and you're 100% booked in and you've got that contact detail, just to give them a call, because like Helen said, in that case, they just closed their doors at a certain time, but the unit was still operating. So thank you very much for that. I'm just going to move on to a review of our Jamboard. So I'll hand over to Corrine. And have we got any questions on the Jamboard, Corrine?
We do. I'll go through some of them now. Is there any funding towards service costs for dialysis for working people? I believe we touched on this with Laura, so I don't know if Laura's probably best placed to answer this one. And I suppose in combination with when you go to an EU country, but there's not an agreement under the global EU EHIC, can you reclaim the costs from the NHS? I'm not sure if Laura, you might know that. If not, we'll have a little look and make sure it's in the information pack.
I believe with, obviously it's different. So as if we're talking about Welsh patients to others, maybe not Wales, so England, Scotland, Wales, it's different, or somebody who's overseas. So I think I noticed there was someone from South Africa, so yeah. That might be different for them. But yeah, so if you travel to a European country where there isn't a facility in the area you want to go to that offers any treatment under the reciprocal agreement, so it might be that, I don't know, you pick an area and there's only a private facility there, which can happen. You can, I believe, as a Welsh patient, apply for funding from the Welsh Trust within the European destinations if it's not covered under the reciprocal agreement. Obviously, the alternative is to look at an area that does, or maybe, change your destination if you're not in an area where you can get any funding. But with that, I believe you do that before you travel if you're a Welsh patient. So you would apply for the funding before. So you get what's called a payment guarantee. And then that's usually sent to the unit that you're traveling into if it was a private facility. So then you don't have to physically pay any money. It would be invoiced from the dialysis unit abroad to the Welsh Trust, and then they pay them directly. So that is an option for Welsh patients, if that answers it.
Thank you. Okay, if traveling abroad, do you need to inform the airline that you have kidney failure and dialysis? I would say it would be a yes. Correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, but
I don't think necessarily, I'm sorry to jump on, but I don't if you have requirements for on board the flight, then I would say, if you need airport assistance or you're carrying a lot of medication, then that, but obviously normally carrying medication these days is a fairly common thing that happens. If it was, I don't know, an unusual type of medication or something like that, then that might be where I would always carry like a doctor's note and your prescriptions like you mentioned before. But I don't think necessarily if you're just traveling as a kidney patient and you haven't got any extra assistance requirements or things like that, I don't think it's like necessarily standard that you would say inform the airline. But definitely, if you're carrying a lot of medication or things that you need to check, then you can always check with the airline that or the travel agency that you're using or whoever it might be.
Yeah,
I think with
Can
that
I add something to that?
Go on.
Sorry. I didn't know how to put my hand up on Zoom. I'm a Teams girl. What I would suggest as well is that I went on holiday abroad when I was on EPO, and I found that getting through security actually took a lot longer because they needed to go and check all the different things. I also got a letter from my doctor to say that the needles I was carrying were legitimate and they were for medical use, just in case. So yeah, just to try and get that easier through the process. But yeah, I was taken to one side and everything was kind of going, right, we need to do this. We almost missed our flight because of it, because there was such a long security line and we had to go through this extra process. So just factor that in, I would say.
Yeah, so
and as another note, sorry, I've traveled on many holidays with my sister who does holiday dialysis. Well, she does dialysis all year round, but she dialyzes on holiday too. And Some airlines, including Ryanair, who are very difficult to get extra baggage with, will give you an extra free bag if you're carrying a lot of medical equipment, like needles. My sister, she travels to particular units that like you to take your own lines and needles. So she gets a whole bag on board for free. And she has been asked sometimes to explain certain medication she's taken. So when she's taken a bottle of iodine, because the particular unit she was going to don't supply it to clean her buttonhole, I remember one person in Greece asking my sister if she could take a sip of it as if it was baby formula, and we were like, no. So always allow extra time for getting things like that through.
I also think if this is something that's going to give you a bit more confidence, just call up the airline and just ask the question, because they're there to help. You are a customer at the end of the day and you're asking a legitimate question. So why wouldn't they? So if this is something that you're a bit unsure of, just call and ask. Like everyone said, leave some additional time just in case.
Okay. The next one, do you need do you need to have your consultant's permission or approval, either verbal or written? I don't think you necessarily need their permission to go on holiday, but I would strongly advise, obviously you're going to need to consult with your team anyway when discussing about going on holiday, particularly abroad, just to make sure that it's safe. And I would recommend obviously finding out the reasons why, if they are unhappy with you going on holiday. There's gonna be sort of underlying reasons as to why they're not just gonna not allow you to go. But it just makes the process a lot easier if you've got the support of your renal team. They're there to support you and help you. So if there is an issue there, find out the reasons why and what that could potentially mean when you are abroad, because obviously their priority is to keep you safe, and to make sure that you're fit and healthy for that holiday. They don't want you to not enjoy and have a normal holiday, so to speak. So they're there to have your best interests at heart. So I would say that definitely I'd strongly recommend not necessarily getting their permission, but keeping that communication open between your consultant and your renal team as to the reasons why, and to obviously they can, work on a plan if they don't think you're quite ready to go on a holiday, they can work out a plan with you to get you there, because that, as I said, their goal is to keep you healthy and to keep going as normal. If so
To that one as well, Corinne,
yeah.
is that I know with I think you do need to get consultant approval for the for cruise dialysis. I'm not sure about the other ones, but the reason I know this is that somebody I used to dialyse with, she went on cruises with her husband quite regularly, and she never had a problem. Her consultant always signed them off. And then there was one that he said, yeah, you're not fit enough to go on this one, and he wouldn't approve it, and they had to cancel the holiday.
Because it can affect your travel insurance as well, isn't it? If you haven't got the support for your medical team, sometimes you do have to provide that medical note from your doctor. So it is important, as I said, to keep that communication open, as Helen said, just in case if there's a particular cruise or a holiday that they don't think you're fit enough for, they're obviously going to be underlying reasons as to why they feel that way. But they will, work on a plan and to get you there, or offer maybe an alternative holiday or a suggestion that, that you can take part in. So do you have to tell your travel insurance about conditions as a result of your kidney failure, i.e. had like high blood pressure or anemia? I would say yes. The more honest you are on this travel insurance, it is a case of shopping around for the best deals. You're not going to be approved by everybody, but there are some that will still insure you. We've got that list that'll go out, and obviously Kidney Care UK have got that information as well. But I would say be as honest as you possibly can, because the last thing you want to do is be in a foreign country and something, God forbid, happens, or if you become unwell and then your travel insurance not be able to cover you because you've not declared something on that form. It's all in the preparation, as you put everything you can and be as honest you can as that travel insurance. So I would put as much information as you possibly can on that form as you're applying for it. I've got a neckline rather than a fistula. Would that be a problem abroad in the renal unit? Again, this is the communication between the unit you currently dialyse at, and then obviously as you're booking that unit, you need to obviously check. I would say, that the units are prepared for this. They're going to have patients there in their own units with necklines. I'm not sure with the case of cruise dialysis, if anybody else does know and can jump in on that one. But yeah, with the units, they are going to have experience with necklines, but I would just make sure that they are aware that that's what you have before you go.
I can add for our abroad sort of units, I don't deal with cruising, but the abroad
Yeah.
units that we deal with are usually okay with a line access as long as it's, you know, a stable working access. Obviously, all that information is usually sent both at the request stage as to what access they have, so that that can be reviewed to see if the unit can accept and meet their dialysis requirements. So yeah.
I'm going to just jump in there for the cruise dialysis. On the website, there was lots of frequently asked questions on there, and I think that may have been one of them. But if it wasn't, they did have a channel where you could contact them and they can answer any questions like that. And they do obviously speak with your dialysis consultants anyway, so they can communicate there as well.
Brilliant. And the last one that's on the Jamboard, any recommendations for travel insurance providers is yes, we'll have a list that'll go out obviously in the pack. And that information from Kidney Care UK will be in there as well. So you'll have lots of companies that you can try. And as I said, we can't recommend a specific one, but there will be lots that you can sort of shop around with and get some quotes from. There will be some that may decline, but there are going to be ones that there is hope. There will be ones that will insure you and can work through that with you. I can't see any more questions in the chat either. No, I think that's it. If anybody else has got any more questions, feel free to just pop them in the chat there, or if you want to send them to us, we'll make sure we'll try and answer them. But back to you, Georgia.
Yeah, lovely. If anyone does want to turn on their mic and ask a question, feel free.
I just wanted to let Helen know that the unit in Lakeland is still there and open, and it's been taken over by another couple, and the nurse is a dialysis nurse still who took it over, another couple that took it over. So it's still there and still really good.
Oh, that's lovely. I do
Sorry, I've unmuted myself. That's really good. Yeah, I'm glad of that because it was a really popular one. It's very well run.
Yeah.
We've just had a question pop in the chat there. Are there any countries that are off limits?
I can kind of give a bit. I think in my experience, obviously in organising holiday dialysis, I wouldn't say there's an off limits, but obviously there are countries which are maybe more risky than others in terms of maybe how they're dialysing. If there are obviously countries which maybe the standard of healthcare isn't as high a standard as you would want it to be. So there's certain things that we certainly look out for with the unit, obviously in the sense of not reusing disposables or anything like that. But there are obviously countries which, if we can't guarantee that the standard isn't to what it should be, or if there's any risk there in the sense of isolating positive and negative, things like that, there are certainly, and you might find that your own unit also has a risk factor of countries, so that might be something that you can check with their home unit. There are some units that say, no, we don't want you to travel to this part of the world because, or if you do, you have to be in isolation for so many months when you come home. So it's probably maybe not off limits, but maybe more research and things needs to be done into that before deciding on that destination.
Just be careful whether you can take live vaccines as well. I know once I became a transplant patient is that I wasn't allowed to have live vaccines. So for example, like yellow fever is a live vaccine. But yeah, it may be that, as going back to the themes that we keep coming back to, is communication. Speak to your kidney providers and to your consultant and find out if there's any vaccines that you can't have, and that might naturally restrict the countries that you can go to.
Lovely. And I've got a question that I'm going to throw back to you guys. How far in advance should you book holiday dialysis?
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah.
We would say, as a kind of a guideline minimum, we'd say 4 to 6 weeks. Obviously, if you can give longer, I wouldn't say 4 to 6 weeks is a definite. So if it was an emergency situation and you needed to be somewhere next week or within a couple of days, sometimes that can happen if people have to be somewhere for something that's, you know, urgent or in emergency situations change. Then it can be done quicker, but obviously it just means that everybody involved in that, so your home unit, the accepting unit, are working on getting the information and things that's required. So if it was for a holiday purpose, then I'd say try and give as much notice as possible, and we would advise around that 4 to 6 weeks as a minimum, more if you can, because it can take time to organise.
Lovely, thank you. And what documents do you need to bring for holiday dialysis?
I'll go again.
Carry
Apart
on.
from one of them quizzes. Again, it can vary. I think we all touched on this, that it can vary. The requirements of each unit can vary. So some units might ask you to bring more medication and disposables than others. They might ask you not to bring any and might provide it all. So again, it's individually, I would say, per unit. Usually there might be things like you mentioned, EPO was mentioned earlier, those kind of medications, and obviously your normal medications that you take at home or something that you would take with you wherever you go. But again, that should be something that however you're organising your holiday dialysis, that information is given to you, obviously before you travel. You should probably be made aware both that when you're making inquiries with the unit as to what's required, and again before you go. So certainly what we provide is information, again, a final confirmation letter with all those details on of what you would need to take with you. Again, with the medical information and things all being pre-sent, if there was something that unit particularly couldn't provide for you, then you would be notified of that before going as well. So you should be well aware of anything that you'd need to take with you before you go. But usually things like lines, dialyzers and things like that are provided at most units. It just might be certain medications, or if you're in a needle size that they didn't have or something like that, then they might ask you to provide those, but you should be given all that information before traveling.
Lovely, thank you very much. And can I just double check that there are no more questions before we move on to some of our top tips?
There's another one that's come through in the chat, Georgia. Are the holiday grants only available when dialysis has started? So Lindsay, I don't know.
No, all of our grants are available to dialysis patients, transplanted patients, even pre-dialysis patients. So generally, when we have a high demand, we do tend to prioritize people on dialysis or within the first year of a transplant, but we do look at each case individually, and we don't automatically rule things out just because they don't tick a certain box. So if you're not on dialysis, so say if you've recently had a transplant, you can still apply for holiday grants with us, just like you can with any regular grant.
Fantastic. That's all that's come through on the chat now.
Lovely, in which case I'll just move on to our top tips. So a lot of what we've said today is talk to your renal consultant or social worker. That open line of communication, we really encourage. It's going to help you, it's going to make you feel more confident, and it lets your renal consultants know that that is something you're hoping to do and they can work with you. Have a few locations in mind when looking to book your holiday dialysis. We've spoke a lot about flexibility and making sure that you've got lots of different options so that you're not disappointed if you can't get into one that you would like. Ask the dialysis unit before you visit if they accept visitors. As Helen mentioned, these people that you may be going to visit friends, they want to spend time with you as well. And even if it's a case of they sit with you while you're on dialysis, that might be something they want. And even if they can't, at least they know beforehand so they can make other arrangements, especially if they're your mode of transport. Consider bringing home comforts and food for your sessions. I know we talked about speaking with your dialysis centres, and it may seem like a silly thing to ask them if they have vending machines, etc. But it's really not. If it's going to help towards your comfort, it's an easy question for them to answer as well. But it just gives you an insight into if you should be bringing things like snacks or anything like that. We also mentioned talking to your dietitian if traveling abroad, if you have any food concerns, if you're hoping to try things and you're just not 100% sure, have a talk with your dietitian. They can give you sort of some guidelines on what foods maybe isn't best for you, and that it'll be unique as well to your diet. And for PD dialysis, we said, remember to bring tape and consider where the bed is in relation to the bathroom. And again, having that open dialogue with your accommodation, just give them an insight into what it is that you need and see if they can accommodate. It might mean speaking to more than one accommodation, but that way, when you get there, you're not going to be feeling stressed about how you're going to set things up, because you already know. In some cases, some accommodation will give you a floor layout of that room specifically upon request. That's not the case for every accommodation, but if you did need to, you can ask and request a map of the floor. So that is everything for our top tips. And I'm just going to move on to some helpful resources. Now, as you can see on the right-hand side, some companies do offer leaflets for holiday tips and guidelines. Some are quite specific for transplanted patients, PD and hemo. So you can request those on the website. And on the left-hand side, we've got some links there to some of the information that we've gathered here for you today. So we will be sending an email out with this presentation with a PDF linking to the resources that have been referenced here today and anything that can be used to help you in the future for holiday dialysis planning. We also have on the top left-hand side Kidney Mail's financial assistance grants. So we have mentioned in the chat function, I don't know if anyone has seen, but whilst we don't offer specific grants for holiday dialysis, we do offer wellbeing food vouchers and other financial assistance grants. Now, the reason we mention this is because something like that could help relieve some financial pressures that gives you more access to money for holiday dialysis. And you can use those in collaboration then with potentially Kidney Care UK as well. So for more Kidney Wales information webinars, we've just popped that on there as well. We will be hosting a few more webinars this year. One's going to be looking at our current research. We're going to have another on early detection and symptoms of kidney disease, and another looking at diet and nutrition. So thank you all for joining us. This was our first information day, so we will also be sending a survey out to see how we can improve for future events. So we'd really appreciate any feedback. But thank you for attending, and keep your eyes peeled for any future events we may have. Thank you, everybody.